members of the State Highway Patrol. Let's hope it stays quiet. Let's get some more perspective right now from CNN political commentator Marc Lamont, who's with Huffington Post TV. Also starting this fall, he's a professor of African American Studies at Morehouse College in Atlanta. He's going to be a busy guy. Also, law enforcement analyst, the former FBI Assistant Director Tom Fuentes, and our senior legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin. And Mark, we've watched these protests grow larger tonight. You heard the police chief earlier call it a powder keg. The governor said it looked like a war zone yesterday. What runs through your mind as you see what's going on?
The first thing that comes to my mind is the word enough. People around the country, but particularly in Ferguson, have had enough of these incidents. They've had enough of these really convoluted investigations, the lack of transparency. As the family just said a few minutes ago, all of this is frustrating to people. Young black men are being gunned down around this country, and I think people are frustrated. And when we saw law enforcement's response to that over the last few days, we see it's a microcosm of the complications and the antagonisms that exist between communities and police all around the country. It's really a sign that we need to do more and do better.
Jeff, we heard from a number of people in Ferguson that there's just a general lack of trust between the citizens there and the police force that's supposed to protect them. How much do you think that lack of trust is playing into all of this?
Well, it's a huge factor, and also you have this weird situation in Ferguson where it's about 65% African American, and in terms of its population, and the leadership of the city is almost all white, and the police force is almost all white. That is a toxic combination for starters. Diversity has a very is often very successful in these sittings. When you combine that background with the shooting that, at least on the surface, looks so terrible and so unjustified, you can see why people responded the way they did.
Tom, the attempt by the governor, Jay Nixon of Missouri, to lower the tensions, to put the State Highway Patrol in charge of policing, what do you make of that?
I think that last night's media coverage was the final straw. Watching what happened with those two reporters in McDonald's, having the flex handcuffs put on them, having them paraded out of that location, without a clear understanding of why. I think that was just maybe finally the final straw. And I think that what should have been done 5 days ago finally was done today in terms of explanations of who's investigating this matter, what's going on with the case, who's in charge. You know, we've had the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office in charge for 4 days. We have yet to have heard from their chief or sheriff as to what they were doing and how they were doing it. And I think that now that there's some effort to try to bring tranquility to a very difficult and, problematic situation.
Mark, what's the most important lesson you want people to emerge with at this early stage in the aftermath of what happened Saturday?
That an organized response brings results. As awful as the rioting was, as terrible as the looting was, the fact that people were able to organize and respond and put a spotlight on something that was very ugly and might have slipped under the radar had we not seen the resistance. So for me, organized response brings change, and we need a great deal of change here.
And Jeff, I assume you think the Department of Justice investigation, in cooperation with the FBI, we will learn exactly as we can what happened.
Absolutely. You know, this was a terrible crime, but it was not, or a terrible event. We don't know whether it was a crime, but it was not that complicated. There is a limited universe of witnesses. There is a limited universe of scientific tests, ballistics, toxicology that can be done. All of that will be done by the FBI and the Department of Justice working together, and we'll know what those facts show. And I'm confident that the Justice Department will make an appropriate decision about whether to prosecute a crime here. And at least most of the mysteries about how this event could have taken place will be solved. And I hope we can all learn something
Tom,
when we go forward.
Tom, you very quickly, because you're a former FBI Assistant Director, should they release the name of the police officer who shot and killed this 18-year-old young man?
Yes, there's been enough time for them to provide security for that officer if they needed to have moved him out of the area or into some kind of seclusion. They can't keep it a secret forever. They might as well go ahead and release that information. And I think to go back to what Mark just said a minute ago, what he said is sad and very, very true. It should not have taken 5 days of rioting to bring about the necessary changes and the attention to the overall problem and demographic situation and lack of training situation that's going on and has been going on in Ferguson. That's a sad state of affairs.
Tom Fuentes, Marc Lamont Hill, Jeff Toobin, guys, thanks very much. Just ahead, more on the contrast in tone between tonight and the kind of military-style response we've